What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the debut album from Excision, released on Mousetrap Records, X-Rated. This is the first full-length LP from dubstep legend Jeff Abel, aka Excision, the so-called modern father of the genre who claims to be half human, half robot, half dinosaur. Something that, although doesn't make any sense, is entirely fitting for him as a figure and character. Producer of 4 albums, owner of Rottun Recordings and Destroid music, pioneer of incredible live shows, founder of Lost Lands Festival. But it's this project, his first substantial multi-track release, that paves the way for all of that to happen. A project that doesn't come out of nowhere relative to Excision and his brief discography prior to that, having been involved in tracks like Swagger with That Sick and The Existence VIP alongside Downlink. Properly grungy, extraterrestrial dubstep with distinct elements of metal infused in it, setting us up perfectly for the X-Rated album. However, it does come out of nowhere in the sense that there was nothing else like it around at that time. Other big, predominantly dubstep projects that came out in 2011, such as Skrillex's Bangarang and Nero's Welcome Reality, having a distinctly pop element to them that made them pretty accessible even to those outside of standard dubstep appreciation. But here you had dubstep in its most primal form, stripped of its glitz and glamour, with a full focus on transporting us to the most alien worlds possible. Alien in the sense that it had that outer-worldly feel to it, but also in that it didn't have that approachability of others from the genre, revealing a new level of dubstep appreciation altogether. An album, moreover, that operated beyond its metal tendencies to incorporate hip-hop inspired beats, the genre that Abel puts up there with his most enjoyable alongside dubstep. So all in all, you suddenly had a pretty unique thing here, working its way into the dark electronic music consciousness. Of course, there was other seriously dark stuff out there, but in terms of its combination of musical influences, none had this kind of aesthetic. 10 tracks here, covering a wide range of different moods and tempos from beginning to end. From the dauntingly groovy, chugging insistence of the second track, The Underground, to the cheeky, electro-leaning, full of life naughtiness delivered in the third track, Oh No. And then more chilled, reflective ones such as the fifth number Sleepless and the final cut Jaguar. So undoubtedly a lot on offer here, and quite the journey from start to finish. It all kicks off with the title track, bereft of a demonic overlord voice, that which became an introductory staple for Abel over the years. But in its place was the visceral vocal delivery of Messinian, whose lyrics here remain classic to this day. I'm XXX, bitch, triple X rated. The first I heard of this fantastic partnership, leaving enough of a mark to elicit the same feelings in me now as when I first heard it. The dubstep here also cannot go without being mentioned as a captivating tone setter for the following 9 tracks. Very earthy sounds, meaty in design, with motifs running through it and a real respect for time and space throughout. The percussion too, giving the impression of a machine starting up, provides the perfect guiding light for what's to follow. And from that point onwards, the album is a collection of different approaches that are all revisited at some point across the 46-minute runtime. For example, the dubstep in the second track, The Underground, is extremely hard-hitting, relentless almost, but has a definite pull and magnetism to it. Similarly, we get this in Execute, a perfect midway track, again undeniably filthy, but with a seriously inviting flow and rhythm to it, difficult to put down. And also the penultimate number, Deviance with That Sick, which has potentially my favourite dubstep on the entire album. The musical and structural journey of which really is a beautiful listen, gritty in essence but so colourful, with loads of neat moments of isolation, very aware. You then have the more sprightly, bubbly, and exuberant numbers in Oh No and 8-Bit Superhero. The former being very much the most outlandish on the X-rated album, with its high-intensity beat, chipmunk-like vocal, and hyper-interactive, saturated sounds, and the latter even more animated in its jumping from sequence to sequence, albeit at a slower tempo. Another huge bit of fun on this album nonetheless, and completely suited to its title. Similarities can be had, of course, between Oh No and the 8th track here, Swerve with Downlink, in terms of the sheer pace of them, but Swerve I would actually align with track 7, Sexism alongside Schism, the two which I find to be the most outright dark on X-rated. Swerve being a grisly house-type number stacked with riveting mechanical sounds, the dark energy of which never lets up, and then Sexism, which is just as mechanical and clunky sounding, just in a slower tempo, a good mix of sounds and haunting at its core. Those two tunes having undeniable moments of groove and rhythm to them, just not in the same overt way as others on X-rated, coming across as darker and heavier in the process. Lest I forget the more somber and reflective tones offered up by Sleepless and Jaguar, with Savvy and Mr. Hudson on vocal duty respectively. Tracks that built on the foundation established by songs like That Girl prior to this album, and inspiring future cuts like Interstellar from the Codename X album. Sleepless in bringing together a spacey instrumental, and Savvy's drifting vocal is stunning in its subtlety, effortlessly powerful and truly authentic. Whilst Jaguar draws X-rated to a close in time-stopping freeze-frame fashion, sobering and angelic, one of the best endings to an album I've ever heard. Very raw and genuine, the chilling hum from Mr. Hudson that permeates the track, ultimately making you sad that the album is over. An album that fundamentally is understated in and of itself, and one of the most underrated in the general bass canon. Understated in that a lot of X-rated is actually pretty stripped back production, not too glaring or in your face as he grew to become in following years. Simple and effective with a noticeably rudimentary feel to a lot of the sonic construction here. Available to make us appreciate what dubstep was around that time, full of experimentation and ideas, and rough around the edges in design, which wouldn't hold quite as well if released today, but I find that to be its most appealing factor, and in terms of realising where dubstep has come from, this album is arguably the most important. More so than Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, for example, which very much skipped making original dubstep sounds a little more intense, Skrillex more so blowing them out of proportion entirely. But Abel did so with an ease and control and sense of vibe that I'm not sure any other producer has done since. Extremely well put together, full to the brim with iconic and memorable moments, which I would say give it the underrated tag within the context of modern dubstep. Messinian's vocal in the title track, the intros to Execute and Deviance, the main melody in Sexism, to name but a few. Continuous music without huge second drop changes or massive builds, just slight alterations to keep the listener engaged and maintain that rhythm and flow from beginning to end. Incorporating the muddiest, most vibrant sounds into structures spanning dubstep, BROSTEP, DRUMSTEP, ELECTRO, not to mention the metal influence too. There's just a lot on offer here, an album that cannot be lost in the sea of dubstep that's come out since, such is its importance formatively. One that I think represents more of a bridge between original dubstep and the crazier stuff we hear today and have done for the last few years than any other. Infecting dubstep with the flow, bounce, control, rhythm and respect for timing of hip-hop, an extremely welcomed project in the midst of the BROSTEP boom. And when you realise there was a 4-year gap between X-Rated and its successor, codename X, you acknowledge just how standalone the former is within X's discography, but also dubstep generally. It has its own space and impact that I'm not sure future albums of his do. The stylistic evolution from codename X onwards is pretty drastic, and that's what makes X-Rated so significant as a piece of work. Of course, you have Destroid in between those two, but in terms of solo Excision projects, noticing the changes from one to the other really does make you appreciate the former much more. And it's from this album that we get Destroid, the Paradox Tour, the succeeding albums, Lost Lands and more. This really was the foundation for everything, which I feel deserves way more credit, not only as a bridge from one style of dubstep to another, and the nostalgia that comes with that, meaning that he created something very of its time and respective of where the dubstep genre was at in that moment for us to look back on, but also in its journey from start to finish, its wealth of iconic moments, its standing as something completely unique, all of which I hope to be recognised and remembered for years to come in the dubstep world. And so that is that for another review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of the debut album from Excision, released on Mousetrap Records, X-Rated. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on X-Rated. Is this a classic for you? Do any tracks from this album rank alongside your all-time favourites from X? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting the notification bell along the way. For some other dubstep reviews on the channel, check out the link next to my head somewhere. Don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across social media if you haven't already, all of which is linked in the description box down below. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure as always to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see all of you legends in the next one. Peace out.